Welcome to Real Agriculture. I'm Bernard Tobin, and today we're going to talk about the future of the seed industry, specifically the future of the Canadian Seed Growers Association. To do that, I'm joined by CSGA Executive Director Glenn Chansey. And hey, Glenn, welcome to Real Agriculture. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Bern. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Now, the Canadian Seed Growers Association has long provided leadership for the industry, set national standards for seed purity, managed the seed certification process, and advocated on behalf of your members. You're currently working on a new strategic plan for the organization, and when I hear of an organization like CSGA going through that process, it usually means you're reacting to change. You need to meet new challenges or take advantage of opportunities. What's driving your strategic plan process?
Well, I think there were two triggers to go back about a couple of years back, actually. Just before I joined the CSGA just over a year and a half ago. But part of the reason I did join was that, in fact, those signals that you mentioned, the inevitable change signals had been communicated by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, which is essentially CSGA's partner in delivering the seed certification system or program. And the agency, as part of a broader exercise to modernize, had indicated that it was going to, at some point in the not-too-distant future, this being 2 years ago, focus its attention on the seed program. And, sent some fairly clear signals that included, review of the Act and regulations, the way the program was delivered, and, a fundamental, essentially, review. And that obviously, generated a reaction, not just on the part of CSGA, but also on the part of its sister organizations, such as the Canadian Seed Trade Association, Canadian Seed Growers, Canadian Seed Institute. We can talk about maybe a little later, but the reaction was a common reaction on the part of all the players. So the government is envisaging change. Do we want to react to it, or do we want to be proactive and essentially, develop our own vision of what that change should look like? So that was really the trigger, and it was a trigger for the CSGA to start asking questions about whether it had essentially a long-term plan that that positioned it to take advantage of this opportunity or not. And the short answer was not, and that was really the trigger for the development of a strategic plan. But then there was a secondary, but I think increasingly a primary driver. So the secondary driver for the development of the plan was the fact that the seed industry associations, as I mentioned earlier, themselves decided that they needed to mobilize together, and they initiated something called the Seed Synergy Project, a Seed Synergy Collaboration Project, and that project, is designed, and it's in full flight now, basically to articulate a vision at a 30,000 feet, a high level, but then also go further and start to identify specific options. And the CSGA felt that it needed to be ready for that conversation as well, so that it could play a role in that exercise. So those are really the two triggers.
I've had a look at, the draft of the strategic plan, which you're talking about with your members, and just wanted to talk about 4 or 5 of the key points here, and get your thoughts on where you think this might go and what's driving it. And I guess the number one is the focus on designing and implementing a modern, relevant regulations, and minimizing the burden for growers, and obviously high yield products. It's a lot of things there, but how do you make that happen?
I think starts with, to a large extent, engaging with our own membership about what they think needs to be improved, and that includes conversations that focus on small incremental changes, as well as conversations that focus on fundamental changes. And I think the reason that we chose to develop the strategic plan in the way we did, that is to say, through a 1-year process of extensive engagement with our members, as opposed to sort of the standard board level strategic planning process, was because we wanted to not only get input from our members, but make our members aware that things were about to change and they needed to turn some of their attention to it. And I think we've been very successful at getting people's attention at one level, and I think that level is at what I would call the face-to-face level through our series of annual branch annual general meetings, which run between November and February every year, and which bring out what I would call our core grower community. But we're going a step further, and this is really the Seed Talk platform, where we want to reach out not just to the maybe 700 to 1,000 members that we would see face to face, over the course of a year, but the whole 3,500, many of whom really just rely on the organization in Ottawa and the provincial branches, as well as their boards, to carry the ball. And that's the how part is the other part of the your answer. How is through an electronic platform that we're calling Seed Talk, that we intend to maintain not just for this exercise, but on an ongoing basis.
Right. I want to talk a little bit more about that, Glenn. But first of all, just a couple other elements of the strategic plan. I see a renewed focus, an ongoing focus on recognizing the value of certified seed throughout the value chain here. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How important is that in the strategic vision of the organization?
I think that has always been the primary focal point of CSGA policy development. And for obvious reasons, because we are essentially joint custodians of that system and not just the beneficiaries of it. But I think what's a little different this time around is the recognition that we have to step up to the next level and not just focus on the seed certification system as it currently operates, but the entire seed system, the regulatory system in its entirety that supports it, in some cases hinders it, in some cases enables it, and really that's the difference, I think, between where we are now and where we have been historically in these kinds of exercises, where the seed certification system is what we know, what we do, but we also increasingly realize that the discussions in government and more generally are looking at the very foundations of the seed regulatory model, and it could go either way. There's opportunities where we could see collaboration with government and our customers, frontline farmers who use certified seed, to increase essentially the use of certified seed, or we could see a movement in the other direction too, if we just sit back and sort of not participate fully in the discussion. And I think there's a broader discussion that in part relates to the fact that we have a new government. I don't know how many of your listeners would be familiar with what's referred to as the Dominic Barton Report, which is essentially advisory council on economic growth, which reports to the Minister of Finance, but had flagged in its recent report the significance of agriculture to the overall Canadian economy. So this little discussion we're having, about the seed certification system is now a much bigger discussion about innovation, the role of innovation, the importance of it in driving our economic system, our agri-food sector, but also the overall economic system. And it's not a very well understood system by the major big policymakers. It's a complicated system. It's a technically challenging for some people to understand, and there aren't a lot of clear black and white statements that you can make about its contribution. And I think we have our work cut out for us in making the system as it currently functions better understood and appreciated, but also establishing a platform upon which we can engage with policymakers around potential future changes.
Let's wrap this up, Glenn, with just some thoughts on your process from going forward here. Now you're engaging with your growers, 3,500 members. Talk about how you're you're tapping into those folks for insight and to drive this forward.
Well, we're at basically the final stage of the process. So we began back in July at our annual general meeting in Clear Lake, Manitoba, with your classic environmental scan and drew views on what should be in the strategic plan from the participants in that event, and then we followed a iterative process of interviews, engagements, meetings, feedback, and we're on about version 10 of the original document. But we're taking that essentially next to final version, which now incorporates the feedback that we've received today to our board. We're looking for a board decision on what that plan should be next week. And when we get that decision, we're taking that result back out to our members to confirm in sort of one final iteration of the discussion, confirm that we've got it right.
Awesome. And
that would probably last. That would be a discussion that would basically last until the end of April. After that, our members are, in fact, even by then, most of our members are probably already too busy to to concentrate fully on it.
Right. But you expect the final plan to be released when? Potentially.
I think that we haven't made a definitive decision, but I would guess that it would probably be unveiled formally at our annual general meeting this summer, so July 2017, and we have a joint AGM this year with Canadian Seed Trade Association, and we'll be having a Seed Synergy Forum discussion there as well, or very likely we'll be having one. So it'll be unveiled I think at an important point in the whole evolution of the Seed Synergy discussion.
Well, good stuff, Glenn. I know we'll be there. We always attend Real Agriculture. Will be there, and we'll certainly track you down at that time and have another conversation and see how things are then. Want to say thanks for joining us on Real Agriculture and look forward to having you back in the future.
Well, I'm looking forward to coming back, Vern. Thank you for having us.